Well, hello and welcome to today's webcast, which is Boosting Field Service Performance with a Mobile App. I'm Dave McCormick, the product manager here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to be joined today by Nikos Kazantsis, who works with Hyatt Communications, a large mobile network provider. And today he's going to be talking about an application that he built for field service workers. So let's begin. Hello, Nikos. I see that you're on mute, so if you could take yourself off mute.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Hello to everyone. I'm very pleased to be kicking off this Alpha customer case study series of webinars. And this one is about field service performance and building a mobile app and showing the mobile app that we built to help with our field services and how to manage our people out in the field in better ways. A little about us. Hyatt Communications is a telecom services provider. That means we work with the network operators, the Vodafones and Verizons of this world, and the internet service providers to maintain their infrastructure, to repair it when it fails, and even to install it as new installations or upgrades. We are based in the Middle East, and we operate in 8 countries in the region. So what do we do out there in the field? We have hundreds of people in each country, field technicians and engineers that perform work on the infrastructure of the network operators. Infrastructure means the cell towers, data centers, fiber optic cable networks, the equipment inside sites, anything that is related to the infrastructure and keeping it working as the operators need it. We have various types of work that we do. We have corrective maintenance, for example, responding to faults and fixing them. And these fall under critical and very severe service level agreements. So we need to fix a critical site fault, such as a power failure, within 2 hours if it's a hub site or a major site, wherever that site is located. And this is running under 24/7. We also have planned preventive maintenance. So even if there isn't a fault, we need to visit all of the thousands of sites in each country to perform the scheduled maintenance, overhauling of generators, cleaning, air conditioning filters, so on, the planned maintenance to keep the system in good health. And based on the report of all that work that we do and the data collected, we summarize that as data to our customers weekly and monthly, usually, to report our work. Now, the standard methods of working before we introduce a software system was something like the following. Imagine a scenario where we've got a field of 20 field technicians, electrical technicians out in the field, and they're managed by a supervisor and a back office. And these people are doing work in the field. And we get a notification for an incident of a power failure in a site. Now, the back office person, the supervisor, needs to pick who he is going to send out of his field team of 20 people to that activity. So he has to know where these people are and what they are doing before choosing who is the optimum person to send. And this was done usually via phone calls. In an urgent situation, even email or texting is not quick enough. He needs to know the situation right there. So he started going around and calling individually the people that by memory he assumed to be either near the incident or available for work, and he would get an update about what these people were doing. And then after he picked the optimum one, he would transmit to him, usually verbally, the instructions about where he needed to go and what he needed to do, or he or she needed to do when they got there at the site that needed the work done. Now, as the field technicians visited the sites and performed work, the data about the work that they were doing was usually collected after the job had been completed, usually at the end of the shift, where the supervisor either called around phone calls to each individual to ask what they did during the day, or was summarized by the field technician and sent in an email at the end of the day. So, and this data was gathered in an Excel sheet, a personal Excel sheet, one per supervisor and per team, to have a report of what happened during those site visits. And our reports in the end were created by manually consolidating all the multiple Excels from the various departments, sub-departments, and supervisors into a summary document to present to our customers. Now, there are many obvious flaws in the methods that I just mentioned. The obvious ones are obviously that the personnel location and status is unverifiable from a phone call. Someone may mention that he's at a specific place or a specific distance from a site, but that information could be either by mistake or deliberately wrong. The transmission of work instructions over phone is an error-prone procedure. It's dangerous to transmit instructions about details or site coordinates or details about the fault of the equipment and the error codes encountered in such a way. The details of work performed were lost because no one kept a detailed log exactly at the moment when they were visiting the site. They summarized this data hours later. There was no common method to record the data, so we ended up with multiple Excel sheets, sometimes storing different data, sometimes storing different data even under the same labels and column headings. And in the end, to create a report out of all that was a manual process, and it needed a human translation and processing before we could summarize and create one final result from that data. So the requirements in front of us were to extend our visibility out in the field. Instead of having that veil over our field operations, we needed some more visibility into that. We needed to know what our field personnel were doing in a live and accurate manner. We needed to be able to dispatch and notify our field personnel with accuracy and effectiveness. We needed to bring data collection to the field. We needed to collect data during the work performed, not after the work was completed. We needed to be able to produce metrics for the performance of our teams and for our whole company and for the utilization of our personnel, and be able to produce customer reports at the click of a button without needing to do hours of manual processing to get a final report ready. The result is a software application that we call CMRI, Computerized Maintenance Rollout and Inventory, and that has been implemented to achieve all of the above. So to bring automated processes into our daily workflow, to give situational awareness in the back office, to know what our field is doing without an endless chain of phone calls, to increase the accuracy of the data capture, both in the field and in the back office where data is stored in a reliable way. Decrease reliance on voice communication and instant message communication. This is huge. The standard processes for a software application mean that supervisors and back office people are always on the phone. They're continuously communicating to multiple people over phone. And the problem with that, obviously, is that information over a phone call is lost as soon as the phone call is finished. It is not traceable, it is not verifiable, and the information is just available at that moment in time. And having that amount of data and that accurate data now in the database, we can now increase the accuracy and speed of our report creation. So how do we get what we needed? Well, the obvious choice is to put a smartphone in the hands of field personnel. And this is also their camera, this is their GPS device, and this is also their communication device for receiving instructions and executing work. We need to give them a mobile application where they would manage the work assignments given to them. And with that same mobile app, we would be geolocating and timestamping their activities automatically. We would not have a user say, I arrived at the site, at this site with coordinates X, Y, and at this time. He would just say, I arrived at the site. And the geolocation, the timestamp part of this would be handled automatically by the mobile app. And then we need to give supervisors a web application to actually create and manage the work assignments for the personnel and to pick the optimum ones for the job. To view the user locations and to view the user status in a consolidated way with the data collected from the field and from the mobile users. And to create reports via configurable sort, filter, search, and so on, create the exact report that they needed, and then exported and distributed. So, why alpha? Obviously, this is not an exotic application, and surely similar application exists commercially. And we were so confident that these exist that we spent 6 months evaluating commercial off-the-shelf options with the direct support from the vendors of these products. And we aimed high. We went for Fortune 500 class servicing companies. We went with software that, for our size and scale, would be approaching 6 digits or exceeding 6 digits, and within 6 digits. And the result of our 6 months of evaluation was that there are too many compromises and common denominators in off-the-shelf products when your business environment is complex enough to be varied in itself. So when you don't have a specific single set of requirements and screens and data that you want to store, but you have multiple workflows, multiple projects, multiple customers, slightly different requirements with each, but then you want a system to match those varying requirements, commercial off-the-shelf software usually doesn't offer that. It offers a common denominator approach to satisfy their customer base. There are thousands of customers who need to be satisfied with that one common product. Plus, the disadvantage of this kind of software and the scale of software is that usually a per user license is applied, either a desktop user or a mobile user. And in an organization which is large enough and which may expand significantly on signing a new project, keeping a tab of user licenses and paying for them becomes a major issue and a hindrance to adopting that kind of solution. So, on the other hand, rapid application development is the glove fit needed. Don't adapt the company workflow to the way a software works, but adapt the software to the way the company works. A company that's been doing the same thing for 10, 15 years has workflows already defined, and they obviously work well if that company is successful. So we don't want to change that. We just want to ease the operations and give improved tools to help that workflow. So rapid application development was the choice forward. And out of the rapid application development platforms on offer, Alpha Anywhere seemed to be a perfect fit. An end-to-end platform. We could build our server app, our mobile app, also a hybrid mobile app with supporting the native features. We had integrated security, authentication with hundreds of users hitting the servers. This is an important point. Geolocation and mapping, a large part of what we need already out of the box. And offline capability, which I'll come to in a minute, also a major point, being able to work disconnected without a network and be able to connect again when the network is restored. And finally, no user-based licensing scheme. I have a license for a server, and based on the performance of that server and its capacity to support the incoming users that are hitting it, that's the limit, the performance of the server. There is no user-based license scheme to consider or worry about. This is a quote I love from Dan Bricklin, who's the Alpha CTO. We presented a part of the CMRI application in this year's Alpha Developer Conference. And as Dan was commenting on the Hyatt case study, he said the following quote: "People say you can always get connectivity. Let me tell you this example. These are the guys who fix the cell towers. There is no connectivity because the cell tower is broken. That's why they're fixing it." End quote. I mean, if you think about the scenario where you would expect not to find a network available, that would be either a place where the cell tower is not working, or maybe in the middle of the desert. And in the Hyatt case, we face both such situations, and sometimes we face these situations simultaneously. So we do need to fix a broken cell tower in the middle of the desert. So offline capability for us was a must-have. And having it already built out of the box, available to us, already tested by the Alpha team themselves and offered in a ready product, was a huge boost. And needless to say, connectivity issues are not encountered only in these type of situations. We do get intermittent connectivity in building basements. We sometimes get even intermittent connectivity inside the buildings themselves. And there are also other remote areas where people are necessarily going offline. So the platform for managing field operations that we call CMRI, there are three types of users. There are the dispatchers. These are the people who work in the back office. These are the managers of the field teams and the team leaders. They are the ones creating the work assignments. They're the ones doing the actual assignment and the managing of the field work. Then we have the field personnel, the majority of users in our case. These are the people equipped with smartphones. These are the ones who are receiving the instructions on their mobile device and the ones executing and logging the field work. And then we have the supervisors and higher level managers, which do not actually create content themselves, but they review the data that is in the system at higher levels, such as metrics, reports, and so on. These are the country managers, even up to the CEO of the company, who would just log into the system and have a single screen view of what he needs to see. Now, with software, we don't only get messaging and mapping. We can also apply other features that help the daily workflow. For example, when we have the work task description and we've created steps and instructions and checklists, these can be built into templates. That means that every time I need to create a new instance of that specific work task for the next assignment, I don't need to re-enter all of that data again and again and again and again. I just create templates for my repeating activities, which have all the information I need in there. So I just create an instance of that, and it carries all the information I added. Best match assignment. How do we help the dispatcher pick the optimum people for the next work assignment, especially if it's a critical one, a time-critical one? Well, apart from the static information, such as these people are fiber optic technicians and they work under maintenance department and so on, we have the live data as well. What is the status of these people in the field right now? Where are they in the field right now? What are they doing in the field right now? What is their workload based on the previous work orders that were assigned to them? This helps people, dispatchers, pick the optimum people for the job. Execution and logging of work using the smartphones. This is not just receiving messages and seeing your position on the map. This is also access to server-side data. We can give, as long as we have that mobile application running, we can give people access to things like detailed site information, asset data, data sheets, manuals. All that is within reach with that mobile field device. We have the centralized monitoring capability for the first time. People do not need to collect data from various sources and spend time consolidating it. There is a live view with live updates about what we want to see. We go one step deeper, one level deeper from the site level and into equipments and parts and spares. So not only are we doing maintenance in a site, but now we can create instances of equipment and parts and spares that we use while visiting and working on that site, which means that we can now target specific activities against that equipment. So we can have a history of the maintenance that we performed in a specific generator, for example, and not necessarily as part of the complete site. So even if that generator moves later on to another site, we still have a full audit log of the work that was done. And finally, the logging and reporting, both for internal use and for client use. One of the design challenges of CMRI was, how do we build a single application that covers all of the projects we worked with? We didn't want to create separate applications per country, per project, per department. And it was more challenging, obviously, to set up like this and design and build it. But in the end, we've added enough flexibility to the system as it is. So what we find is that as we expand into new projects and install it in further countries and add new users, the flexibility that we planned already from the start can take this into account and now helps us have a single set of components where only the data in the database is enough to separate the various user roles and departments, subdepartments, and projects. The power of this is that it allows a true consolidation point. That means if I want to see where everyone is at in the field right now, I don't have to go into separate departments and view their separate views. If I want to see all the works done and report done for part of the work or the complete work, I have access to that from a single system. And practically, development-wise, when I'm updating my components, I only need to care about one set of components and one mobile application, not separate versions of it, depending on which department I'm targeting it for. In this respect, we have a very simplified concept of the various entities in the application. Any trigger for action, any trigger for work is a request. Any actual work being performed is called a work order. All users are classified under personnel. All personnel manage and log their work via tasks and logs. The data that is collected is viewed via charts and reports on the website. And the equipment and parts are managed via inventory and assets. So within those general entities, we built functionalities underneath to match and satisfy them. So we've created a request management functionality, which is like a help desk. This is the tracking of trouble tickets. This is the live SLA timer tracking. We have the work order. This is a complete element describing a single visit to a site. Everything from the work creation to the assignment, to the people visiting the site, to the work being done, to the checklists being completed, to the work being finishing, dates, times, all that is contained within that one single container called a work order. And all the data that we need is now there for us, even if we need to review it weeks or months later. Personnel management and dispatching. This is the access and display of the location and status of users. This is the pushing of notifications to their mobile devices when there's an update for them. This is the complete access to data from the field, and this is even the capability to track the location of the users ad hoc if we need that capability there. Task planning. Sometimes work orders are created ad hoc as alarms come in, for example, but sometimes, like we said, during scheduled maintenance, we have a massive amount of work orders that are planned. So we have we need to visit 1,000 sites within the next 2 months to do the overhaul of the diesel generators. So these kind of schedules are helped via scheduler components and bulk updates of work orders when we need to reschedule a set of work orders, or calendar views to make sure that all this does not overlap one another. Electronic forms. This is a major component. This is the replacement of paper forms with electronic forms, and we have an example that we will show later on. Just to mention that these are fully data-driven. There's nothing pre-built in the mobile application for the 100, 150 electronic forms that we might need to use. They're all stored in the database. The mobile application just parses the data from the database, so it's very flexible and adaptable to new forms or updates to the existing forms. Inventory management. This is a standard functionality in all such software, but we went one level further and included the vehicles in the inventory management. And the reason is that as our teams move in the field and visiting sites, they always carry with them toolkits and spare kits. So when we're checking the available quantity of a Cisco 10G SFP module, it is important to know not only the stock in the warehouse, but also the stock in the vehicles. And when we're actually doing live inventory search and someone in the field needs one of these devices, one of these spares, he might find that there is a vehicle 5 kilometers away from him, which might have this spare already in the trunk. And this might be obviously much closer than needing to drive 2 hours to the nearest warehouse to pick up the same material. Asset management, as we mentioned, the ability to define specific equipment and target work against specific equipment in the site. And the reporting, which is both live dashboards updated periodically to show the data as it exists in the field, or pre-configured or customizable exports of parts of the data that we've collected. This is an example of the automations we've managed to achieve with CMRI. These are the things that were previously done in a manual way that we are now able to execute using software processes. So creating work orders, transmitting them to the field, checking their status, notifying the users for the new work orders, doing live turn-by-turn navigation to sites on the mobile side, logging work progress, collecting photos, trouble ticket SLA calculation, bulk creation of work orders, inventory search from the field, KPIs, dashboards. All this was manual work that is now done in our field operations using CMRI. This is a brief overview of the most important concept in the software, which is the work order. So there is work that needs to be done in a site, and the trigger for this work is either a request, meaning a trouble ticket from the customer, a third-party request, such as the municipality complaining that a generator in a site is noisy, and so on. It can be a planned schedule. We have, as we said, the thousands of sites that we need to maintain periodically. Or it could be ad hoc. Someone visited a site yesterday, but they left some snags and they need to be fixed, so there's a follow-up team needed. All this leads to work, and work leads to a work order. A work order, a single visit to a single site by one or more people. To create a work order, we reference the site data, complete site database in the system, plus templates, pre-defined levels of information about the work order, so we don't need to enter again checklists and instructions and so on. Once the work order is created, no one has access to it yet in the field unless we assign it to them. And the way we assign it to field technicians is by checking their static data, so the personnel data, with department, sub-department, designation, function, and so on. But also data, where people are they on shift? How much workload do they have, and so on. And when the work order is assigned to these people, a notification is sent to them via email, SMS, and push, so that we're absolutely sure that they received this instruction. Now, when the work order starts, and it doesn't have to start immediately, it can be a scheduled work order that could start hours or days later, there are two parallel streams running. The mobile stream is that the person on the mobile application loads the data from the work order on his device by clicking on it. And after that point, continues to execute the work order and log the updates. Now, whatever he does from this point forward also works offline, meaning that even if after this point, after having received the work order instruction, even if he loses data network while driving to the site, all the information about the work order is still on his phone. All the site information is still on his phone. All the lists are updatable. He can continue to attach photos. He can continue to write notes. He can continue to update his task list when it was done. And once network is back up, it will be synced back with the server. The other parallel stream is the website. So in the back office, the supervisor is checking all of these updates as they happen. So assuming the network connection is there, as soon as something is updated on the mobile, it is also visible from the website. So have they reached the site? Have they finished the first task? Have they finished all the tasks? Have they found an issue? It is all updated live. No phone calls needed. And if needed for some extreme cases, we can even initiate manual user location tracking directly from the server without the mobile user doing a status update himself. And finally, the work order is closed. It is placed in the archive and available for our reporting, either directly reviewing the work order or as part of a larger report with metrics. Just to quickly go through some screens of the application, just to show you how this works in practice. This is the help desk trouble ticket screen. So these are, for example, the incoming alerts and tickets. These are the priorities that are coming in. These are the statuses, acknowledged, pending, and so on. This is the SLA, hours, nominal hours to resolve the incident. If a work order has been created, and an indication if they're not created, so the supervisor knows that something needs to be done. The actual live timer, how much time do we have left before we need to solve this incident? The dates for the various actions, and a button to immediately create the work order directly from the information in the trouble ticket without needing to re-enter all of this data again. Dave, sorry to ask, am I coming clear okay? Is everything good?
Everything is coming through loud and clear. Yeah.
Great, fantastic.
I've got actually a quick question for you. The screen we're looking at now, is that built using a grid? It kind of looks like it at the bottom.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know someone was going to ask that, so I thought I'd ask it first. Thanks.
Okay. And obviously, thanks for that. I was just going to mention that the grid obviously offers us, it's not shown here, but it offers us all the inbuilt search, filter, sort, export functionalities for all the data that we display. Now, this is the bread and butter. This is the work order grid. These are the actual activities that we need to do, the site that we need to do them in, and some planned dates for when it needs to start and when it needs to finish. But after this point, the other updates are done from the field. So when a dispatcher in the back office side, who is this person in this case, the created by column, creates this work order and assigns it to these people shown in the assigned users column, then after that point, the dispatcher more or less sits back and waits for the updates to come to him and display in this auto-refreshing grid. So as something is placed in progress by the user in the field, this status is updated to in progress. If there's a note written, the note column is increased to show that. And if you do a hover over the note column and number, it shows you the note that was written. If there are attachments, photos added to the work order, you can see them as they're added on here. If tasks are completed, you can see them here. So this is a summary view. This is a dashboard for the supervisor. This saves him an enormous amount of phone calls and messaging back and forth to know where his people are. And again, exactly because this is a grid, it is searchable, filterable, so he can only place on that grid the information that is relevant to him and his activities, even only the ones created by him if he wants, or her. So the updates that he receives are what he would actually get manually, but just calling all of these people in the field. This is the work order dispatching screen. If we've created a work order for a specific site and we want to pick who are we going to send to the site out of our available list of users, we have a similar screen such as this to help us. And this screen, as we said, shows static data. These are our users. This is the department, subdepartment, designation, and function of these users. But you'll also have live data. Are these people on shift or not? What are these people actually doing in the field right now? Okay, they're on shift, but exactly what are they? And this is what they're doing, updated from them directly in the field. This is the number of work orders that are currently open and assigned to each individual user, so we can check the workload and see who is overloaded and who is idle. And knowing the site, because as we said, the work order is linked to a specific site with coordinates, and knowing the geolocation of the users based on these updates, we can calculate distance of each of the users to the site of concern. And so by just looking at this list without calling anyone, we can quickly see that Nagarajan is an idle person. He has no work orders. He's on shift. He's a reasonable distance from the site. There's only one person who is closer, but he's already got 2 work orders assigned. So very quickly, this has helped us filter out and pick this person to assign to the next work order. It doesn't mean that necessarily he will do it, because there might be some other issue that we're not aware of, but at least this filters out the whole previous process of picking out of 10, 20, 30 people in the list to just the ones that are valid and applicable for this case. And as we said, all updates are accompanied by location data, so we can, whatever that grid is showing out of users, we can move to the map view, and even if we want to geographically point and say, this is the location I'm interested in, which are the users nearby, we can quickly check, and clicking on each user, we can even see his status and what he's doing at that point. Now, the important thing is getting the data, as we said, into the database. Once the data is there, the report creation part of it is very flexible and extremely powerful. So to get our weekly and monthly reports about what activities we do, the data is already there. We just need to count it and summarize it in the ways that we need. So this is a monthly or weekly view of the work orders that we've performed, and we can filter by category, department, subdepartment, and so on. So the things that people needed to count previously by their Excels and their emails and their SMSs about what people did are now just a few clicks away. Apart from the raw data counting, such as this functionality, we can do some more interesting things, like take our list of users and say for a given time period, how many work orders have they successfully completed? And based on the start and end time of the work order, what is the average time that they spent on this activity? This helps us, first of all, balance to see if we've got 2 people in exactly the same function and department, subdepartment, everything is comparable. But we have differences in their assignments. Someone is overloaded, someone is not so overloaded. We can help balance this out and make the work distributed evenly to all. And then we can see performance differences. Why is one person taking an average of 7 hours while the other person is taking an average of 2 hours to do the same type of activity? There are various reasons for this, but this is just an incentive and a trigger for the dispatcher to look further and discover inefficiencies in the daily processes. Dashboards, as we said, live use, for example, of our trouble tickets, which ones are in what status, in what priority, in which ones the SLA was breached, and what is still active, and so on. Moving to the mobile application, this is the reception of work orders. I've logged in as a specific user, and these are the work orders that I see that are assigned to me as that specific user who is logged in, and some summary data. Once I click on these work orders, I have access to the full data of the work order. Everything that is created on the website, tasks, tools, consumables, attachments, notes, everything is also available on the mobile side. Plus, because I've got coordinates now, I've got coordinates of the site. I'm looking at site DXB2291, which is a cell tower in Dubai, for example. The system knows its location, taking it from the database. It knows the user's location from the smartphone, and then it plots a route to quickly calculate distance and time to arrival based on Google traffic calculations. So if a dispatcher asks the field technician, how long do you need to get to the site? That is as good an estimation as any about how much time he really needs to get there. We can add some more features. Sometimes coordinates are enough to get you to a site, but sometimes they're enough to just get you to the door. And if you're talking about a generator room inside a mall or a stadium, then coordinates to get you to the door are not enough. So in this case, we can add, and we've added floor plan functionality. So for each site, we can link a floor plan drawing that has marked on it the specific room that we need to go to that is representing that specific site, so people can navigate easier to go directly to the point that they need. We can also assign equipment to the sites. So knowing that this site has specific equipment installed in it, we can say what that equipment is. So we say this is a UPS of a specific model and a specific manufacturer and quantity 1. And going further into the details of this asset, if in the database we create a reference to say whenever this model of equipment is found, we can attach specific documents to it. And then if we have a technician looking at a UPS and seeing the power LED flashing every 2 seconds, and he doesn't know what that means because he's never seen that type of UPS before, he would need to look up manual to get that information. Well, instead of him looking up through the internet, now we just create this reference once in the database. So in any of our sites, wherever we encounter this type of equipment again, these documents are available on mobile for download for him to access directly. Attachments. We attach photos to work orders on the mobile side. You can see thumbnail view or full screen view, and these are presented also on the website. These are visible again, thumbnail or full screen view. We also have the option to download with watermarks because, for example, if you want to send these photos out to a customer, photos by themselves don't say anything. They don't mention which site they're from. They don't mention dates. They don't mention this type of information. So by downloading these photos with watermarks, we attach a part to the photo at the bottom, not overlapping the original image, just a part at the bottom, which shows this extra information that we already have in CMRI. Someone in CMRI already sees this info, but someone just receiving these photos sees it watermarked at the bottom. Checklists. As we said, we can organize the way that mobile teams work more effectively by creating for them checklists. So when they open their work order, they know what is the procedure that they need to go through. So in this case, we created for them a checklist with 4 actions. Check that the door is locked, check the battery expiration, install a 2G cabinet, and install a 4G cabinet. And as this list is created on the website, it appears on the mobile side. And as on the mobile side, people are updating this list with the actions that they did. So in this case, the user responded marking a yes that the door lock was actually found locked. Then this is also updated on the website, so we can see that this user has now completed this task. He's marked a yes. This is the user that did it. This is the date and time that he did it, and he's marked this task as completed. So I don't need, as a supervisor, I don't need to be calling this person as he's going through a long procedure to check which stage he's at and if he's facing any issues and if he found specific answers or not. I can just see it directly from the screen. No other communication needed. A major requirement, as we said, is forms. In many cases, in what we do, people need to fill out printed forms. These are documents that are customer provided, and people print them beforehand. They take them with them to the site and fill them in the site, and then leave them at the site when the job is completed. And obviously, there are dozens of these types of forms. Now, data collection in this case is non-existent because the data lives on this page and it's left at the shelter, so there's no way to access this data. Forgetting even the accuracy of entering something by hand in a list, there's no access to this data anymore unless you go back to the shelter and retrieve that page to check what was the battery voltage that you measured 3 months ago. So we implemented an electronic forms application, but which would be dynamic enough to manage multiple 50, 100, 150 form types without needing to update mobile application each and every time. This is a data-driven form application. So we recreate the forms on the smartphone and the mobile app. We access the data that was submitted from the field. We access it from the web. And then we have the option to also export it if we want to a form mirroring that original one if needed, but now the data is collected electronically from our mobile. So this is how it looks. I have a list of forms that I can use, and if I pick, for example, the air conditioning form, I get my sections and labels and questions related to the air conditioning form. If I pick the diesel generator form, I get the questions and sections and data related to the generator form. And the way I fill this in is that as the form is displayed on screen, depending on where I click, I'm led to a data entry screen where if it's a numeric field, I get a numeric keypad. If I have a list type of selection, I get a list of predefined options. If I have a map type of, an address type of field, I get a map where I drag and point where my location is or get it automatically from the smartphone coordinates. And if it's a text field, I just use the full text keyword and type it in. On the website, when we're reviewing the data collected for the generator report, for example, the columns shown here correspond to the generator form. So engine serial number, diesel tank capacity, oil, check oil leakage, and so on. And these are the data collected for that. But when we're reviewing air conditioning service report, then we're seeing the fields corresponding to that report. So check temperature of unit, check ventilation fan, and so on, and the data collected there. And with this grid, all the standard options of sort, filter, search, and export to Excel and export to PDF. Now, for the export to PDF, because in the end we did find some uneasy customers who still like to have a printed document in their hands, we had the option in Alpha. This is created directly from the Alpha report builder. So this is the original printed form on the left, as it is printed and filled in on the site or in Excel manually. And this is the data created and the report created from CMRI. So when pressing here PDF on export on one of these specific instances, then it picks up the data just for that instance, places it in the proper places on the form, fills in the other information such as who is the logged in user who did this report, what is the site number, what is the date, and so on. People don't need to enter that by hand. And then it creates a form page ready to be exported with the correct logos, ready to be sent to the customer if needed. Going through some of the challenges that we faced, we mentioned in brief some of these before. An important challenge was the variance of our complete scope. So from the start, it was very obvious just by comparing the original raw data that we had in our hands, the Excel sheets that people used before implementing CMRI, that the variance was large even with similar items. So if we got a site Excel listing the list of sites that we maintain in one project and comparing with the site Excel from another project, some fields were common, but some fields were different. And this applied to users, it applied to sites, it applied to assets. So it was an important challenge, and it took us longer to develop, but in the end it proved amazingly flexible. To be able to combine all that and create a structure where you can incorporate the static repeatable data and present that to common screens, but also have the option to have the add-on auxiliary data that sometimes appears, sometimes not, but it's still in the system. If it was there in any raw data that a user gave us, that means someone needed that data to be there, so we cannot ignore it. So this was one of the challenges that we faced, but in the end, we achieved to end up with a common set of components. So when I'm updating the Kuwait server and I'm updating the UAE server or the Bahrain server with the updated components, if we do some code changes, I only have one set of components. I don't create separate projects and separate versions or separate mobile apps even for the different applications in each country. The mobile application is a PhoneGap application, and PhoneGap was used basically and initially for the faster loading of the app. A browser-based component just took too long to load on its own. So a phone gap application was needed there. But this also gives us access to the native functions on the phone, such as push notifications and background geolocation. The limitation of phone gap was that we needed to distribute the updates. If it's a browser-based app, people just access it on the server and have always the latest version. But if it's a phone gap application installed on the phone and we have updates for it, we need to update it somehow. And the standard method is obviously the App Store, the app stores, but which in our case were not applicable for two reasons. One reason is probably limited to our region of business, and which is that people here are a little bit uneasy with storing their data and their critical applications on a server thousands of miles away in a remote country. But the other factor that would apply to other cases as well is that when you have an application in the App Store, there's an authorization process to submit your app in the App Store and have it approved, and then for it to appear in the App Store itself for people to download. So if you've got a working application and it works absolutely great and everyone has it, so you've got 300 people in the field using it 24/7, and you issue a new update of that application, and you're using an App Store, for example, and you issue that application and people download it, if you discover 30 minutes into the update, as people start using it, that there's a bug that prevents people from logging in, or they cannot attach photos, or the date formats are wrong, and you need to urgently issue an update because you're losing time and people cannot log their data, even if you fix the problem within 30 minutes and have a ready mobile version, the authorization process in an app store still takes hours or days. And it's practically not feasible to wait for such amount of time every time you have an issue and you need to update your app. So we decided to build a distribution mechanism on the application itself, on Alpha itself, and thankfully Alpha supports that process. So we put our phone gap builds on the server after they're built, and we built a distribution mechanism which informs users of the updates, blocks their usage of the previous version of the application unless they update to the latest one, and takes care of the updating in this way. And another challenge, which I'm sure many of you have faced before, is the decision of what to do in mobile and what not to do in mobile. And it's a common finding, at least in our case, that everyone wants to do everything on mobile. If it was possible, dispatchers and supervisors would work from mobile. But the reality is that a laptop and a keyboard and a mouse and a screen of the size of a computer gives you is more suited to several of the operations we saw, and especially some of the busy screens that we saw at the start, where you even need to hide some columns because they just don't fit the screen with the amount of data that you have. So it needs to be clearly separated from the start that you're only going to do a specific amount of functionality on mobile. It would be great to be able to do everything and build a single UX component that would satisfy all roles and rearrange itself on screen depending on the screen size and all that. And Alpha definitely supports this, and there are ways to do that in Alpha, but what we found is that there are some realistic limits that you cannot exceed, and we try to keep that in mind from the start while designing, and some functionalities that were not meant for mobile use, like picking the proper users without displaying all the relevant data, or displaying a complete dashboard of work orders is just not usable on the phone. So it's advisable to avoid it. Finally, some feedback from actual users. So during implementation, CMRI was fielded 12 months ago, and during that time we've been talking to the field users like we did before implementing to collect their requirements, but now after implementing it also to receive their feedback. And we run either face-to-face talks or do electronic surveys to gather their input and their feedback for further development. And just to leave you with some of the statements that were made by this was a survey to our UAE dispatchers a few months ago about what is the CMRI feature that you find the most useful. And you can see from the comments on this page that, and the feedback that we're getting from them is that the way that they work has really been transformed by this. And going back to what they were doing before in endless phone calls and non-accurate data collected is just for them, just a memory. tracking timing of activities, increased productivity, better customer service. We have customer meetings where the customer is discussing and doubting sometimes some of the things we tell them because previously there was no way to prove them. Now we just open the laptop, point them to the screen and tell them, this is the data that we collected from the field. This is the live map view. This is where our teams are. And that usually ends the discussion there. So thank you for this opportunity, and I'm very happy to have being able to present an overview. Obviously, we didn't have time to dig into the details, and I haven't showed you a large amount of functionality that was there, but there's only so much time in this webinar. So thank you for your attention, and if there's anything you'd like me to clarify, please let me know.
Great, thank you very much, Nikos. So there are a few questions, so why don't we get into them right now?
Sure.
The first one has to do with the construction of the mobile portion of the application. And the question is this a phone gap wrapped application, or is it just pure HTML5?
No, as I mentioned, this is phone gap. There are even events that we call it in phone gap, such as awake from sleep. And there are also some modules that we pass in, like the background geolocation, that was just not possible using the standard browser. So to get the automated location tracking, for example, you can get geolocation from a standard HTML5 app, but once the phone goes into standby, that is no longer an option. So there were some features that we needed phone gap for.
Okay, that makes sense. And another question someone had, actually, let me go over the mobile question one more time. So it was HTML, it was a phone gap wrapped. How did you distribute the application? And is this a bring your own device environment where the workers out in the field have their own devices, or do you supply the workers with devices?
We supply the workers with devices. We have standard 2 or 3 models that we give. They're all large screen, at least 5.5-inch smartphone, Android smartphones for cost considerations. Yeah, as I mentioned before, yes, we built our own distribution system. The relying on App Store is not time critical enough. You cannot wait for hours for an update. If there's something critical, you need to send an update right at that moment. So we built our distribution mechanism right inside Alpha.
Oh, that's great. Someone else asks, in one of the screens you showed a distance calculation showing how far a staff member was from a work site. How did you do that calculation, someone asks?
I think it's a Haversine formula. There's a formula based on lat long that calculates that for you.
Okay, so it's just based on, you give it 2 sets of coordinates and
yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Let me see what else I've got here. Well, my question is that all of the screenshots that you've shown are in English, but I know that you're using this in United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and other places as well. Is this application in English, or is part of it in Arabic or in other languages?
It is not. It is still only in English. It was a requirement to make it multilingual at the design phase, but we found that everyone was fluent enough in English, even in this part of the world. So definitely, it is a good feature to have for cases where that might be an issue. But for our case, we found that it was not needed, so we focused development on other things.
Oh, that's fantastic. And another question is, can you estimate the man hours that it took to put this application together? It looks like quite a big undertaking.
Man hours? No, man hours would be extremely difficult.
Okay.
Calendar-wise, I can tell you that the first demo to a customer was built in a week, and I'm not exaggerating. This was a web plus mobile demo. It was very basic, very bare bones, but it still had geolocation, still had requests, still had a trouble ticket calculation. So that was an amazing thing to do. But it's safe to say that to build this whole scope took around 6 calendar months. And sometimes calendar months are important because no matter how many people you throw at a project, you still need some feedback from the other side, and the other side needs some time to digest what's coming at them and give you some meaningful feedback back. So the calendar-wise, we went from start of development to production in our first country within 6 months. But since that time, in the 12 months that we've operating and expanded to other countries, actually development has never stopped, because as soon as people saw what they had in their hands, suddenly their imagination exploded, and they started asking things that were invisible to us because we did not know their details of daily operation, but for them it was critical, even if it was only for us a 5-minute fix in one of the grids in the system.
Excellent, great. One other sort of staffing question here, which is how many developers did you have working on this project?
The maximum we had at any point was 4.
Okay.
And they were switching in back and forth depending on the expertise that we needed. People working on mobile, for example, people expert in databases and things like that. But it was maximum was 4. The standard running was around 3, and during support we can go even lower.
That is excellent. And another question here is, what UX technologies did you use when you built the application? Did you use the form view control? Did you use the list control? Or did you do something different when you put it together?
No, it's basically the list control plus detailed view. The forum view was, I think, just coming out of beta at that time. Right. So we were still following. Yeah, we're still following the standard detailed view. Safe to say, one of the upcoming updates to the mobile app will be considering the forum view to replace entity components. We have circumvented around the limitation of a heavy component by using a phone gap build, which takes care of all that initial loading itself. So
sure.
it was an issue when using a UX. The UX it took a very long time to load because of exactly of all the detail views. But when switching now to a forum view, it remains to be seen if now it will be the performance-wise it will be even better than it was before.
That's great. Well, the questions are pouring in. We only have time to get to about 1 or 2 more tops.
Okay.
But, someone else asks, when it comes to storing data in the device, are you keeping them just in the lists, or are you using like SQLite or something else like that?
No SQLite. They're all in the list, standard, alpha, built-in functionality.
That's great. And then the last one is, let's see. Oh, and this, someone asked, but I think you've answered this one already, is how often are you updating the app? And it sounds like you're continuously updating the application. Is that more or less correct?
Do we mean development-wise or operationally updating data from the field?
Actually, that's a good question. I'm not sure. In fact, could you?
Okay, let me answer both.
Yeah.
Okay. In the application, there are various screens of importance. So, for example, the trouble ticket screen which shows the SLA tracking is updated every minute. The work order grid, for example, is updated every 10 minutes. But obviously, that's just a GUI setting on the alpha page. So if people ask for something different, we change it for them. Development-wise, we issue around the period for updating of the mobile app is around 1 to 2 months. Previously at the start, at the initial operation phase, it was something like every 2 weeks, for example. But now that it's stabilized and most of the features are there, it's less often updated. The website, which exactly. On the website, which has mobile is just one component, but the website is a number 40, 50 components, and there that is let me say weekly or daily even sometimes, because the updates are coming in, the requests are coming in from users, and we just prioritize and say whatever is ready to be updated, it's updated. So on the website, updates are multiple times a week.
Wonderful. Well, Nikos, thank you very much, and I want to thank everyone who attended today and also wrote in a whole bunch of nice questions. People were very impressed with your application, I have to say. And quite a few people have asked whether or not there'll be a recording, and yes, this session was recorded. You could look for it in about 2 days at videos.alphasoftware.com. So thank you again, Nikos, and thank you again, participants.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
We hope to see you at a future webinar series. Take care, and goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.